Silence changes people in ways that words never can. That is why one of the most misunderstood moments in any relationship is not the breakup, not the argument, and not even the distance. It is the moment an avoidant finally comes back after weeks or even months of complete silence. Most people spend that time creating a picture in their mind of what will happen next. They expect a heartfelt apology. They expect clear answers. They expect emotions to finally come pouring out. But psychology tells a very different story. What actually happens when an avoidant faces you again is often quiet, subtle, and surprisingly predictable. The signs are so easy to miss that many people walk away believing nothing happened at all, when in reality a powerful emotional process was unfolding beneath the surface. That hidden process is exactly what we are going to uncover today. By the end of this video, you will understand why avoidants rarely return in the way people expect, why their first reactions are often misunderstood, what is really happening inside their mind after a long period of silence, and why the reunion often follows the same psychological pattern over and over again. You will also discover why many people accidentally push an avoidant away again within minutes of reconnecting without ever realizing what they did. These are not random behaviors. They are patterns that attachment psychology has been studying for years. Yet, they remain unknown to most people because avoidant emotions are rarely expressed in obvious ways. That is why so many relationships become trapped in confusion instead of understanding. One of the biggest myths about avoidant attachment is that avoidant people simply do not care. They are often described as cold, distant, or emotionally unavailable. But that picture is incomplete. Many avoidant individuals experience emotions just as deeply as anyone else. The difference is not always in what they feel. The difference is in what they do with those feelings. Instead of expressing emotional pain, they often learn to suppress it. Instead of moving toward connection during stressful moments, they instinctively create distance. While another person may seek comfort through conversation, an avoidant often seeks comfort through space. This difference creates one of the most painful misunderstandings in relationships. The person left behind sees silence as rejection. The avoidant experiences silence as protection. Both people are hurting, but each believes the other is feeling something completely different. As the days turn into weeks and sometimes months, both lives continue moving forward on the outside, yet inside, unanswered emotions quietly continue growing. One person keeps searching for explanations. The other keeps convincing themselves that staying away is the safest choice. Over time, those emotions do not simply disappear. They change shape. They become quieter, heavier, and more difficult to understand. Then one day, for reasons that are often invisible to everyone else, the silence ends. That first meeting after a long absence carries far more emotional weight than most people realize. Every glance, every pause, every small question can reveal far more than a dramatic speech ever could. What surprises many people is that avoidants often communicate their deepest emotions without directly talking about those emotions at all. Their behavior becomes the message. Their hesitation becomes the message. Their calm expression becomes the message. Even the questions they choose to ask can reveal fears, curiosity, and unresolved attachment that remained hidden throughout the silence. These small psychological signals are rarely discussed because most people focus only on the words being spoken. Yet the human brain communicates far more through patterns than through sentences. That is why understanding attachment psychology changes the way you see every interaction. Once you recognize these patterns, conversations that once felt confusing suddenly begin to make sense. Moments that seemed meaningless suddenly carry a completely different meaning. The silence itself begins to look different because you understand what may have been happening beneath it instead of judging only what could be seen on the surface. There is another truth that almost nobody talks about. Time alone does not automatically change anyone. Silence does not magically heal emotional wounds. Missing someone does not instantly erase lifelong attachment habits. Some avoidants return with greater self-awareness because distance forced them to reflect on themselves. Others return carrying the exact same fears they had before. That is why the reunion itself is never the full story. What matters is what happens after the reunion begins. This is where people often make painful assumptions. They mistake calm behavior for indifference. They mistake hesitation for lack of love. They mistake emotional control for emotional emptiness. In reality, many avoidants have spent years learning to hide vulnerability because vulnerability once felt unsafe. That does not excuse unhealthy behavior, but it does explain why reconnecting often feels so confusing for both people involved. Understanding this difference can completely change the way you interpret their actions. Throughout this video, we will carefully break down every stage of what usually happens when an avoidant finally faces someone after a long silence. You will learn why their first instinct is often to observe before they truly engage, why they may appear surprisingly calm even when powerful emotions exist beneath the surface, why they often test the emotional environment before revealing anything personal, and why one emotional conversation does not necessarily mean lasting change has taken place. Most importantly, you will learn how to separate genuine emotional growth from familiar attachment patterns, so you can better understand what is actually happening instead of becoming trapped by false hope or unnecessary fear. These are lessons that can help anyone who has experienced confusion, emotional distance, or unanswered questions inside an important relationship. The final part of this video may completely change the way you think about avoidant attachment because it reveals the biggest misunderstanding people make after the silence finally ends. It is a lesson that has helped many people stop chasing impossible answers and start recognizing the difference between temporary emotional moments and real personal transformation. Missing that final section means missing the most important piece of the entire discussion, because everything we explore before it builds toward one powerful conclusion that can completely reshape how you view both yourself and the avoidant person in your life. If understanding the hidden side of human psychology, attachment, and emotional behavior interests you, then you are in exactly the right place. Welcome to the channel. Here we explore the deeper patterns behind relationships, emotions, and the human mind in simple and practical ways that help you see people more clearly. If you enjoy this kind of content and want to keep learning the psychology behind behaviors that most people misunderstand, make sure to subscribe and turn on notifications so you never miss our upcoming videos. Now, let's begin with the very first pattern that appears before an avoidant even says a single word. The first thing many avoidant people do after a long period of silence is not speak from the heart. They observe. While the other person may be focused on finally getting answers, the avoidant is often focused on gathering information. This happens so naturally that they may not even realize they are doing it. Before they decide how much of themselves they are willing to reveal, they quietly study everything happening around them. They notice your facial expressions. They pay attention to the tone of your voice. They watch how quickly you respond. They notice whether you seem calm or emotionally overwhelmed. They ask themselves questions that never become words. Is this conversation safe? Is this person still angry? Are they expecting me to explain everything? Will I lose my freedom if we reconnect? These thoughts can move through their mind within seconds. To someone watching from the outside, it may seem like they are simply being quiet. In reality, their brain is working hard to judge whether opening up will bring comfort or emotional pressure. This is one reason why avoidants sometimes appear distant during the first moments of reconnecting. They are not always trying to punish the other person. Very often, they are trying to protect themselves from emotions they have spent weeks or months keeping under control. This careful observation is connected to the way many avoidant individuals learn to deal with emotional stress much earlier in life. Instead of moving toward emotional closeness whenever relationships become difficult, they often learned that creating distance felt safer. Over time, this response becomes automatic. Their nervous system begins treating emotional intensity like a possible threat, even when no real danger exists. Because of this, they naturally become highly aware of anything that could lead to emotional conflict. They notice whether your questions sound demanding. They notice whether your body language feels tense. They notice if your words carry blame or disappointment. Even if you believe you are hiding your emotions well, they are often paying attention to small details that most people overlook. Sometimes they notice that you seem peaceful. Sometimes they notice that you appear stronger than before. Sometimes they notice that you no longer seem desperate for their attention. Every one of these observations influences how much they are willing to engage. The more emotionally safe they feel, the more likely they are to remain present instead of pulling away again. This does not mean they are carefully planning every move like a game. It means their attachment system is constantly asking one important question: can I stay here without becoming emotionally overwhelmed? Another misunderstanding happens because people often expect dramatic emotions after a long separation. Movies teach us that people cry, apologize, and immediately reveal everything they have been feeling. Real life is often much quieter than that. Many avoidants return with a calm expression that surprises the very person who spent months thinking about them. Instead of visible excitement, there may only be a small smile. Instead of emotional speeches, there may be ordinary conversation. Instead of obvious vulnerability, there may be careful self-control. This calm behavior often confuses people because it seems completely disconnected from the long silence that came before it. They wonder if the avoidant truly cared at all. They wonder if they were forgotten. But emotional expression and emotional experience are not always the same thing. A person can feel deeply while showing very little on the outside. This is especially true for people who have spent years learning to regulate powerful emotions by hiding them. Their calm appearance should not automatically be mistaken for emotional emptiness. Sometimes it reflects years of practicing self-control whenever relationships become emotionally intense. Inside, the experience can be very different. Even while appearing relaxed, an avoidant may be dealing with uncertainty, nervousness, curiosity, and even fear. They may worry about saying the wrong thing. They may fear reopening old wounds. They may wonder whether reconnecting is a mistake or the beginning of something healthier. These thoughts often remain completely invisible because they have become skilled at controlling what they show. For many avoidants, emotional control creates a sense of safety. If they stay calm, they believe they are less likely to become overwhelmed. This is why their face and voice sometimes reveal far less than what is happening inside their mind. The person sitting across from them may believe nothing important is happening, while internally they are managing dozens of conflicting emotions all at once. Understanding this difference helps explain why so many reunions feel emotionally confusing. One person is searching for visible reassurance. The other is quietly trying to prevent their emotions from becoming too visible. Neither person fully understands what the other is experiencing. As the conversation continues, another interesting pattern often begins to appear. Rather than immediately discussing the relationship, avoidants frequently start with ordinary questions. They ask how life has been. They ask about work. They ask about family. They ask whether anything important has happened during the time apart. At first, these questions seem simple and almost unrelated to the relationship itself. Many people even become disappointed because they expected a deeper conversation right away. But these ordinary questions often serve a much greater purpose. They help the avoidant understand how much has changed during the separation. They are listening carefully to more than just the answers. They are paying attention to confidence, emotional stability, independence, and personal growth. If you describe a life that continued without constantly waiting for them, they notice it. If you sound emotionally balanced instead of desperate, they notice that too. Every response gives them new information about whether reconnecting feels emotionally manageable. Without directly asking difficult questions, they slowly begin measuring the emotional distance between the present and the past. Are you still carrying resentment? Do you still expect them to fix everything immediately? Have you become emotionally stronger? Are old arguments still controlling the conversation? These questions often remain unspoken, but they strongly influence how safe they feel. This quiet testing is rarely about manipulation. More often, it reflects uncertainty. They are trying to understand whether returning means stepping back into the same emotional environment they once escaped or entering something healthier. If they sense less pressure than before, they often become more willing to stay engaged. If they immediately feel blamed, cornered, or emotionally trapped, their old instinct to withdraw can quickly return. This is why the beginning of these conversations often feels slower than expected. The avoidant is not only reconnecting with another person, they are reconnecting with emotions they once believed were safer to avoid. Then something unexpected sometimes happens. After enough emotional safety begins to develop, the avoidant may start revealing thoughts they never shared before. During the months apart, many difficult emotions remained buried beneath daily routines and emotional distance. Without constant relationship pressure, some people finally have enough space to recognize feelings they spent years ignoring. They may admit they thought about you more often than they expected. They may quietly confess that the silence was not as peaceful as it looked from the outside. They may say they felt confused by their own reactions. They may even acknowledge that they became overwhelmed instead of intentionally trying to hurt anyone. These admissions often surprise both people because they sound completely different from the emotionally distant person remembered from the past. For the first time, hidden emotions begin finding words. This does not happen in every situation, and not every avoidant reaches this level of openness. Some continue protecting themselves behind emotional distance. Others slowly begin lowering the walls they spent years building. The difference usually depends on how much genuine inner work happened during the time apart, rather than how much time simply passed. Hearing these honest thoughts can feel incredibly meaningful. It is natural to believe that emotional openness means everything has finally changed. Yet this is where many people become overly hopeful too quickly. One emotional conversation cannot erase years of deeply learned attachment patterns. Even sincere vulnerability does not automatically create lasting emotional security. Old habits often remain just below the surface, waiting for stressful situations to activate them again. An avoidant who openly admits missing someone may still struggle with closeness a few weeks later. An avoidant who sincerely apologizes may still become uncomfortable when emotional expectations begin growing again. This does not always mean they were dishonest. It often means lasting psychological change takes much longer than one emotional reunion. Patterns built over many years rarely disappear after a single conversation. Fear of dependence may quietly return. Fear of conflict may appear again during disagreements. Fear of vulnerability may encourage emotional distance once more. These reactions are not proof that nobody cared. They are reminders that attachment habits are deeply connected to the nervous system and usually require repeated self-awareness, intentional effort, and consistent emotional practice before lasting change becomes possible. And this leads directly into the most important lesson of the entire video. The biggest lesson is also the one that many people overlook. An avoidant coming back is not the ending of the story. It is the beginning of a completely new chapter. A reunion is not proof that everything has been fixed. It is simply the first real opportunity to discover whether genuine growth has taken place. The question was never just whether they would return. The question is whether both people have learned enough to build something healthier than what existed before. Old habits can disappear for a moment during an emotional conversation, but lasting change is revealed through consistent actions over time. Anyone can say the right words. Anyone can promise to do better. Real transformation is shown by patience during difficult conversations, honesty instead of avoidance, accountability instead of excuses, and the willingness to stay emotionally present even when things become uncomfortable. Healthy relationships are not built by one emotional reunion. They are built by hundreds of small choices that create trust day after day. As we've explored throughout this video, silence does not always mean someone never cared. Sometimes it reflects emotional overwhelm, fear, or deeply learned attachment patterns that are difficult to break. At the same time, returning after a long silence does not automatically mean someone has changed. Missing someone and becoming emotionally healthier are two very different things. A calm face does not always reveal a calm heart. Some of the strongest emotions are hidden behind the quietest expressions. That is why judging only what you can see often leads to misunderstanding. The real measure of change is not how emotional someone becomes during one conversation. It is how consistently they show up afterward. Do they communicate more openly? Do they take responsibility for their actions? Do they create emotional safety instead of emotional confusion? These are the questions that truly matter. Perhaps the greatest mistake people make is believing that love alone is enough to heal old attachment wounds. Love is important, but love without emotional maturity often repeats the same painful cycle. Lasting relationships grow through trust, healthy communication, mutual respect, and a willingness from both people to continue learning about themselves. No relationship becomes stronger because one person carries all the emotional work. It becomes stronger when both people choose growth over old patterns, understanding over assumptions, and connection over fear. That is the difference between simply getting back together and creating a relationship that is truly different from the one that came before. So, if an avoidant finally comes back into your life, don't focus only on the return itself. Pay attention to what happens next. Watch the actions more than the promises. Notice the consistency more than the emotions of a single day. The future of the relationship will always be determined by what both people repeatedly choose, not by one emotional moment that feels meaningful in the present. And remember this powerful truth. Sometimes the most important moment isn't when an avoidant finally comes back. It's discovering whether both people have become emotionally healthier than they were before. That single realization can change not only one relationship, but every relationship you build for the rest of your life. If this video helped you understand avoidant attachment in a deeper way, let us know in the comments. Have you ever experienced long silence with an avoidant? What happened when they finally came back? Did their actions match their words, or did the same patterns return? Your experience could help someone else who is going through the same situation right now. If you enjoy psychology, attachment theory, and relationship insights that go beyond the surface, make sure to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and turn on the notification bell so you never miss our upcoming content. And don't keep this video to yourself. Share it with someone who is struggling to understand an avoidant relationship. It might give them the clarity they've been searching for. Thank you for watching, and we'll see you in the next video.